Thank you, Ahmed, and thank you everyone for attending this webinar today. It's a privilege and an exciting opportunity to share with you what Furoid's been up to in stealth mode these last few years. So this is the team. So I've been collaborating with Henry Kuntz, who's like the bio-entrepreneurial visionary behind Furoid and pushing forward what technology can do in the commercial space. So I have a background in cell engineering and synthetic biology, and I've actually spoken down the years to many startups in the let's say biomaterials and other kind of animal-free alternative technology space, and finally was convinced to kind of dip my toes fully in this area by Henry. And Maria is the co-founder of Furoid, and she's like the conscience of the company and the kind of philosophical guide of the company in terms of she comes from a professional background in conventional fashion industry, and her vision and the vision we all share is one where we can actually transform the fashion industry to something that's, if nothing else, an industry that has a much better perception around the world than it can do currently, unfortunately. So we deliberately have a collaborative kind of helping mindset to fashion, rather than wanting to come in and shake it up or attack or aggressively disrupt the industry. It's an industry we care about, and we want to help that industry evolve, get better, get more integrated into how this planet can keep moving forward in a positive way for people. So one of the core technologies that at the heart of Furoid is a scalable production platform for production of actual follicle-like structures, which are formed using mammalian cells and cultivated within a 3D bioprinted scaffold that functions as an analog of skin tissue. At this stage, that analog skin tissue can just be like a growth support to harvest and produce follicles, or it may diverge into actually being a processable, treatable kind of hide ultimately for processing of fur products. What I'm going to talk to you about today is just share with you Furoid's view of the cellular agricultural industry and some of the challenges, particularly when it comes to fashion and biomaterials as fabrics for garments. A little bit of what progress Furoid has made in developing the tech, and also towards the end, a new development that we just wanted to share with the community. So in terms of how part of why Furoid and I were a fit, and part of the kind of what we think is a novelty of Furoid, is we come to biomaterials and cellular agriculture with a very firm grounding in the realities of cell-based products. Apologies there for that typo, just to check if anyone's reading there. That should be fashion garments, not fragments. But so this is what we see as the established legacy tech for all cell-based agriculture, which is the success story in cell-based production, high-value production, which is the biopharmaceutical model. And the biopharmaceutical backend, as you may or may, I'm sure you're all aware, is very expensive. It's a high-cost backend, but that's counterbalanced in terms of the kind of economic landscape of that industry with very expensive products or purchasers that are customers in terms of government purchasers and insurance company purchasers with deep pockets for the product. So in terms of the emerging area of cell therapy, there's literally a $0.5 million price tag product that you can in the cell therapy space. So that back end, that very costly back end, can be supported by the product price. And this has always created a problem that I was very much aware of when you're trying to transfer that back end to the fashion industry and fabrics for garments. Many startup companies, I had very many meetings with startup companies over the last 5 years, talking ultimately about a low volume or at least a high price product industry of biopharma type back end, but at the front end they're wanting to make general consumer mid-market or diffusion market garments. And I'm like, I can't see how those two things are going to fit. Someone's going to have to pivot, or someone's going to have to seize the nettle and really develop a revolutionary new approach or new tech there for that to fit. So most of these companies that I and other academics had conversations with in the last 5 years pivoted to microbial platforms. That's just a representation of a yeast cell there, to try and lower those costs at the back end. And I could see that coming from initially, and it did come to pass. However, there's an issue. Microbial cells, they're cheaper, they grow faster, so they have all those economic metrics, but they don't have the quality metrics. So in terms of the quality of the proteins they may make, like the keratins or the structural proteins that ultimately are going to form your fabric, microbial cells will struggle to actually make those proteins with the same glycosylations and so on, same modifications, basically the same quality as fibroblasts, mammalian cells. Also, if you're talking about epithelial cells and tissues and ultimately skins and hides, those are complex tissues. So there's very, very little scope for using microbial cells ultimately to deposit or grow or pattern or fashion complex tissues. So that's like that's hence the question mark there. So having said all that, this isn't to say that there aren't challenges and ongoing challenges in these legacy industries. So the biomedical industry, I'm sure we're all aware, has a problem economically with making antibiotics. And that's just something we're all going to potentially suffer from. So the costs at the back end for development of a new antibiotic making new antibiotics very economically unattractive for the current industry. So yes, the challenges cellular agriculture faces can be daunting and they are real, but nothing standing still, and most industries are also facing similar challenges. And also all the conventional industries, animal-based industries, with all the intensification that they bring, isn't necessarily sustainable. I mean, the current pandemic just illustrates that. So all industries, even if they are legacy, are actually facing challenges that you could arguably say are similar to the ones cell agriculture faces. So one of the views Furoid has taken to addressing this is to just target and pivot to products which you could argue are approaching high-end biomedical products in terms of their pricing structure. So targeting, going straight for luxury end products. So it's a focus of Furoid to collaborate as much as possible and partner with fashion brands at the luxury end to start to transform the processes and the pathways, critical pathways to those products, to a more animal-free, cell-based technology at the back end. Again, I'm sure unfortunately I haven't had a chance to see many of today's presentations, but I'm sure many of them dwelled or discussed these challenges faced by cellular agriculture, which is how do you, in an economically feasible way, grow cells that will predictably form potentially complex tissues. How do you feed those cells in a way that they'll differentiate into the cells you want? There's a long list of media people can use to recapitulate tissues, but they all have these expensive, purified, protein-based ingredients that have to be added. Is that scalable? So part of Furoid's approach to this is to, again, so we're led by targeting high-value product classes. We're also energized by the fact that we're moving away from biomedicine, which brings along a lot of freedom. So you don't, when you're in the business of making garments rather than medical products, you actually do not have to faithfully recreate tissues. But everyone knows the diagrams of epithelia. As long as we get a machinable, processable, conditionable product and material, it may not faithfully recreate what's currently understood about the architectures of traditional tissues. Also, we've taken some novel approaches with respect to not having to purchase these expensive cytokines, hormones, growth factors. What we are targeting is still providing mammalian cells, traditionally viewed as expensive cells, with these kind of media, but not purchasing them, not having to buy them in that way. Okay, so in terms of the purpose of Furoid, at its heart, we see ourselves as a contract technology development company seeking to partner up with brands to take forward these technologies. We're going to leverage our expertise in fashion, in synthetic biology, in cell engineering, in biobusiness to drive forward this technology for the sector in general. Looking to partner with fashion brands, but also academia, for-profit research institutions. And importantly, we see a steady stream of technologies spinning out from what we're doing focused on these high-end fashion products, which are also will have impacts in animal conservation. And again, the IP that Furoid's accumulating is always fully integrated with manufacturability at its core. Not sure exactly how I'm doing for time right now. So this is these are a small sample of some of the technologies, patented technology. We see 3D printing and novel approaches to 3D printing. Whoops, am I freezing? As key, particularly we're interested in the capabilities of 3D printing when it comes to patterning complex tissues in a way that's cost effective, but also the unique environments you can provide by 3D printing in terms of basically the resistance the surrounding tissue has to the cell. You can mimic that without having to use cells to create that environment for your cells of interest. So this is just some illustrative shots of some of our tech. So that's one of our early generation skin scaffolds there, and some biological characterization of the follicle-like structures we've been able to get our mammalian cells to grow into. One of the next steps Henry Maria were very excited to announce today is we're looking also in a branching move of our approach to fabrics to move into luxury foodstuffs. Again, it fits within the kind of cost landscape and flattening that cost landscape between the cost of the goods and the price of the goods that we can potentially access. It relies on this simple fact that, so caviar, in essence. So caviar actually isn't eggs, it's mature oocytes, And those mature oocytes actually grow in a relatively, in biological terms, a relatively simple surrounding in which they are fed high energy and high in fat nutrients by a relatively simple surrounding tissue. So we've taken the view, and this is in collaboration with ichthyologists and other specialists in fish conservation, that this platform lends itself very well to mass cultivation of mature oocytes in a 3D printed support. So the 3D printed in that scenario acts as a mimic for a tissue that's known as skein, which is in the whole animal would be the location for where these oocytes increase in size. So this is just a little snippet of the flow that we anticipate. So the diagram, the photo on the right, you can actually see, I hope, or appreciate that you've got in essence a gel-like structure, and those black spheres are maturing oocytes. So what Furoid is developing is a gel-like structure that will mimic, act as an analog for the natural skein. And again, we are going to port the approaches we've had for epithelial production in terms of the right sequence of the right stimulatory growth factors and hormones and so on at low cost with one of our patented technologies. Okay, so this is how you can contact us if you weren't already. So sticking Furoid into search terms, you'll find us relatively quickly. And I'm happy now to take some questions.